Gendry, and I've been involved in the fight against Common Core since the end of February, the beginning of March. We started this group called Common Core Forum to educate parents, grandparents, taxpayers, students, teachers, in fact, about Common Core. Common Core is the Obamacare of education. It's one size fits all, and it's orchestrated by a consortium that was funded completely by the Gates Foundation. And it would really remove control of education from the local level to a consortium in Washington, D.C., away from taxpayers, away from teachers, away from parents. It would dumb down the educational system of the country, but especially of Massachusetts. So the big question is, why should Massachusetts adopt Common Core? And there is no good reason for it. The reason for the fact that there is no good reason for it is the fact that we are number one. If we test students in Massachusetts, they test number one in English and math, not only among the 50 states, but also internationally. So we do have a system in Massachusetts that leads to MCAS, the testing of students, which came out of the 1993 Education Reform Act, which really put Massachusetts to be number one. So basically the other states should have followed suit, should have done pretty much the same thing that Massachusetts did, and they should have developed their standards, and their standards then would have improved. And then the country would not have a problem with education being substandard in some states. So the good news is that Massachusetts is number one. It's that simple. And so when Race to the Top was introduced, in fact, what it was Race to be Massachusetts. But of course, the lobby and the special interests were always scheming to come up with standards, national standards, such that if they were adopted, then you would have a consortium that would test the students, and it would be making a lot of money for these consortiums. So how did we get involved in this fight against Common Core? Well, we realized that we were going to lose a lot in Massachusetts, and we realized that the taxpayers were going to have to foot a bill, and that we would be getting substandard education from what we had. So we started this group, as I said, at the very beginning of March. And it was teachers, it was parents, it was educators, it was taxpayers, it was some students were very interested in knowing about it. And we met in Northborough a few times at the very beginning of March. And I started video recording this and putting it on my local access cable in Beverly. And the purpose was obviously to educate the people in Beverly, but also to put it on YouTube so that people in the States would be informed about it. So as I said, Common Core is Obamacare for education. It doesn't achieve anything for us in Massachusetts. It's very costly. It doesn't lead to better results. It leads to worse results, and it's very costly. Why should we do this? So at some point, shortly after getting the group sort of statewide recognition and distribution, we defined what our first goal was going to be, in addition to educating people. So we did organize these informational forums with Sandra Stotsky, who was the lady, that professor who had come up with the MCAS system, which was so successful, and also the Pioneer Institute, and especially Jamie Gass. So Jamie Gass and Sandra Stotsky went around the state, as well as went around the states throughout the United States, and explained what it was that Common Core was. And as soon as parents listen to a presentation, it takes about an hour, they're absolutely convinced that this is a very bad idea, and therefore they're against it. You just expose it, explain it, and people are against it. So what was our goal? Our goal became very clear. We had to impact the school districts, each one of them in Massachusetts, so that instead of going for the testing of Common Core in the next year, pause it, put it on pause, and study and keep going with MCAS for 1 year. And if we just have 1 more year of this, people will be aware, the parents, again, the students, the teachers, the taxpayers will put enough pressure on the school committees so that essentially in the end, Common Core would be defeated. PARCC, the testing of Common Core, would not be accepted, and we would go back to MCAS or an upgraded version of MCAS, because MCAS had changed over time. So our goal was essentially to pause PARCC, the testing of Common Core, and keep on going with MCAS, and nothing else with MCAS. So the good news is that because of what we did, calling up all these school committee members, we have been successful. We have made it so that 66% of the school districts have decided to stick with MCAS and not go with PARCC next year. So this is a very big victory, right? This is a very big victory. What we need to do now is to continue educating people. We need to go to the 33% of the school districts that are going to PARCC, so that at the end of next year they fully reverse, do a U-turn, and go to MCAS. And then we need to have a debate about MCAS being updated, upgraded. But it would be a local state standard that would be updated, and would not be a national standard over which we would have no control. So the good news is we were successful. We started, as I said, only early March, right? We were on the phone a lot. I went to a lot of meetings and I taped them, and they were available on YouTube. I mean, that was a lot of work. But at some point, it felt like we weren't really being successful. So the upshot of this is that if we apply ourselves to a well-defined, not overly ambitious goal, okay? The first goal could not be to get rid of Common Core. That was not achievable. The first goal was to slow down the machine, slow down, and get to pausing PARCC and continuing on with MCAS. And then when people know what PARCC is, they will say, please, no PARCC, no Common Core, let's do what we had been doing since 1993. So where do we stand? Well, we stand at the point where we need to be mindful of what's going to happen when the when kids go back to school in the fall, and when parents after the summer start worrying about what's going to happen in the next school year. So what we need to do is have people like you who are convinced that Common Core and PARCC testing that goes with Common Core is bad for us. We need to have you talk to the moms, okay? It's really a mom thing first. It's the moms that defeated Common Core in many states, especially New York and Minnesota, and a lot of states where it is being defeated. Common Core is imploding. PARCC is imploding, right? So beware of this truth, which is a fact, that PARCC, the testing of Common Core, is imploding. Common Core is on its way out. But we have we have to minimize the pain on the kids. We don't need to aggravate or continue this worthless experiment with PARCC and Common Core. So basically, what is it that is needed of you? Well, in the fall, we need to go to the moms and the dads, but the moms especially, and convince them that they need to be aware of what's going on in the school, in the school committees, where people have voted to maintain PARCC or to have PARCC and not to continue on with MCAS. So you need to actually go on the phone, call up your school committee, find out what it is that they've done in your town or city, and then go to the moms. Go to the soccer fields, the football fields, the whatever people gather, the moms and dads, and talk to them. And we'll have some lid drop things that will explain to the moms and dads what it is that we can do and that they should do. So I just want to read you a few things that, since Lenny is here, and there will be some legislation that will be introduced by Common Core Forum. So there's going to be 5 pieces of legislation that will be that we at Common Core Forum will advocate for. The first one is to endorse an opt-out bill empowering moms and dads to remove their district children from an inferior and duplicative high-stake exam, which is not internationally benchmarked and not supported by our leading teacher unions. Just want to make sure that you also know, it's a fact, that a new teachers president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association was elected in May. Total upset. This is a very liberal person from Northampton, and she's totally against Common Core. So there are liberals who are very much opposed to Common Core, and this is one of them, this woman, Barbara Mendolini. That's legislation number 1, opt-out. Legislation number 2, to endorse a new snuff-out legislation immediately halting the intrusive data collection process that is part and parcel of Common Core. Kids are asked to feed data into the responses that they give about these various questions, about their families, their histories, the health, the religion, does it make you uncomfortable that there are weapons in the house, and so on and so forth. So all that data is collected, can be sold by the testing agency, and that should be absolutely snuffed out. That's legislation number 2. Legislation number 3, we call it a timeout, which places a 2-year moratorium on park implementation in Massachusetts until further independent review is completed. That should have been the case from day one. In fact, Keiko Oral had offered such legislation. I actually went with a lot of colleagues to Beacon Hill to testify for that bill. We knew it was probably never going to make it, and it did not, but at least we went to Beacon Hill and we testified. The next one is, we endorse a new Massachusetts moms and dads defunding Common Core. So we just, in the end, want to do what Jim Lyons wanted to do, which is to get rid of it. But we need to have all these different pieces of legislation to be pushed simultaneously from different angles. And finally, something also very commonsensical. CCF, Common Core Forum, endorses a new municipal cost-benefit analysis legislation which would measure the unfunded mandate price tag placed on the Commonwealth's 351 cities and towns. I mean, that seems to be also total common sense, but there's a huge price tag associated with testing with these computers, these bandwidths. Every school district has to have the top of the line computer equipment as well as internet access. So those are the 5 things that we are now going to be pushing for. And on the lit drop that we're going to have ready in the fall, these 5 pieces of legislation will be mentioned. That's number 1. And number 2, when you are willing to help us with this project, we will have a clipboard and a sign-up sheet where you can ask the moms to sign up, go on board with commoncoreforum.org. So the email addresses and the phone numbers would be for us to have. We do not sell them, of course. And then it will amount to a petition. Okay, and the more people sign up through a petition, the more power we get. So I think that's, in a nutshell, what the status of our fight against Common Core is. We are successful, but we're not done. All right, that's where we are. We're successful. We started it only in March, and in about 4 months, we really made a very, very big difference. I was personally very surprised by it, but we did, and we need to continue on, and we'll be definitely more successful, and finally we'll kill it. It will be dead. It will benefit constitutional-minded people rather than people who want the federal government to decide on everything. It will be a victory for American principles of self-government, and it will be a victory for freedom. It's that simple.
And the children.
And the children!
And a better education.
That's right. It will be a better education because freedom will be there, and people will choose to get a higher standard, and they'll be measured by higher standards. Yes, sir?
What states have accepted?
Well, a lot of states, I think it's over 45. There were like only a handful of states that did not accept it, but they're all falling off of the.
Well, yeah, I understand that.
Right. So not all states had adopted it, and now it's being peeled off. Plus, the testing of Common Core itself is very much in question.
What originally Texas, Nebraska, Virginia, and another state refused to go with Common Core from the very beginning?
Right, yes.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
And now states are slowly opting, like North Carolina, their House just voted to get rid of Common Core.
I'm looking at California. What are they doing?
Well, if you take New York, they have been implementing it much longer than we have, with more money plugged into it, and in fact the rejection is much more violent, much more extreme than it is here. We would get to the point of it being as extreme as it is in New York. But why subject ourselves to this stress? We don't need it.
Very expensive, too.
It's pointless and expensive, yes.
What is the difference between Common Core testing and MCAS testing?
Well, Common Core testing opens up all kinds of ways of assessing methods. It does not focus on results and content, specific content. It asks the students to show how they arrived at their conclusion or at their final result. So it is not so much it's a difference in the way in which teachers will teach too, because instead of being focused on results, right? They will be more testing to show, so that the students will show that he or she can develop this method, okay? So it's really not testing content, it's testing fuzzy stuff, fuzzy skills, fuzzy, it's more fuzzy than it is concrete. Yes?
Like, there's no wrong answers, it's pretty much.
Right, you can, yeah. So you could be asked to justify why George Washington was essentially a Palestinian terrorist in his own day, right? I mean, so yeah, you have all these strange things that will have Patrick.
Yeah, well, just to go to kind of talk about both of those questions. Common Core is the curricula, it's the part of it's the schoolwork, it's the classwork that's going to be going on. The testing itself is PARCC testing, P-A-R-C-C. Now that's done by Pearson, and one thing to note about how it's being defeated across the country, you have to defeat both of them to understand. But PARCC testing, I think, was originally being implemented in 24 states, I'm sorry, 26 states, and now it's down to
10. 9 or 10.
It's down by a number of 9 or 10 states that have actually opted out of park testing. So that's actually a huge victory on a number of levels, and I think the minimum number that they needed was 15, so it's actually,
So
it's getting close to being like extinct, which is a very good thing.
right.
Behind this.
Yes, go ahead.
Last night I went to a social media event, and it was like the top agencies in Boston. They were talking about 68% of moms are on social media, on their iPhones, in the car, when they're waiting. Can you do anything to, like
Right.
an app?
Yes,
Or are you
yes,
saying a
okay,
petition?
Okay,
No, I'm
yeah,
not-
you're right, this is something that's gonna happen. We
Yeah.
are going to, but the thing is, okay, we at Common Core Forum, we don't have any money, we're volunteers, right? So in order to affect the media through Facebook, what the moms are doing, you have to sort of be able to spend a little money. But it's not that very expensive.
No,
It's like
it's not.
$50 to affect one city. So at some point, yes, we would probably have to do this.
And a petition, you said?
Well, it would be
No.
connected with, okay, so say I have a clipboard, and where do you live?
North Andover.
Okay, so you're here. So you would have a clipboard with North Andover, and you'd go meet the moms at the soccer or whatever, and then you'd sort of ask them to, if they know about Common Core. If they know, they'll say, oh, I hate it, right, most likely. So you just have their name signed and email address signed, and then they'd go on Facebook, they'd friend Common Core Forum on Facebook, and they would want to have a presentation done to their city or town, North Andover.
Yeah.
And once this is done, then you create the momentum for much greater impact on the school committee.
Can't you do an online petition?
Well, you can, an online petition.
Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, obviously it's gonna happen, right? It's gonna happen. At this point, we're not quite ready to do it yet, because, the online petition would be to create, to support this legislation so that Lenny Myra and other people can promote it, right? Or, say there's backing for it. So that's my answer is, the petition at this point has to be the local school district petition, especially those school districts that are against MCAS or, want to stick with Common Core or park testing this coming year. So that's especially what we need to target. Yes, ma'am?
You mentioned something about legislation number 2, halting data collection. What was
Right.
that about?
Right, okay. Now, the whole package of Common Core, which part the testing implements, is that it will get data out of kids, okay? So parents, unless they're aware of it, will have their personal data, health, religion, guns, and so on and so forth, be taken into by Pearson.
How is it legal?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. So you have to wake up your fellow citizens to the fact that this is really not correct. This is.
It's 400 pieces of data.
Isn't some of it would be considered confidential?
It is. Of course they say will never be divulged, but no, you don't trust the NSA, you don't trust, the federal government cannot even hold their own most private, most secretive things, private and secretive, so.
It's data.
Yeah, it's data mining, it's total data mining. Well, it is. So once you see, it takes about an hour to an hour and a half for people, parents, grandparents, school teachers, to become aware of how extensive this whole thing is. And once you become aware of it, you are against it, right? You're against it. So it's these different parts of the entire Common Core thing that are being attacked by these different pieces of
I really
legislation.
don't want to give the people as much as the
Yes.
question. Is there an extra mic?
Pearson is
there an
the
extra
most, it's a publishing company, huge consortium of publishing companies.
But
Yeah.
no bidding goes on, they just get it all, right? So there's
Yeah.
no competitive bidding as to
Right.
who's gonna.
Right. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
wasn't part of the thing of this, a buy-in to the city and town, we're gonna give you so much money if you sign up?
Right, right.
And basically.
Race to the top. It was,
Yeah.
okay, the whole thing was made possible by the financial crisis of 2009. And when cities really needed the money to keep teachers and schools functioning, they got this stimulus money, which is your money, brought back in, and then attached to Race to the Top, and the money coming with it was that the towns that subscribed to it would actually endorse or adopt Common Core, which they could not see because it was not ready to even look at. It was not finished. So they were forced into accepting something that they could not even see. So that made it totally really illegal when you come in. Yes?
Now, has this been implemented into the homeschool?
Yes, it has had some impact on the
Yeah,
homeschooling
because
too.
my neighbor said, oh, I'm doing Common Core, I love it.
Well, there you go.
You what?
Well, it's a little tricky. Let me explain to you why. The parents that do homeschooling and the schools that are charter schools, they're public schools, but they're charter schools, they tend to be above the level of the other schools, right?
Yeah.
So, in effect, they don't care,
Right,
unfortunately.
right.
But it would affect, the data mining would affect them, because they would still have to do the testing through. So in effect, it screws up most of those people's values, which are independence and not feeding the government too much stuff. Right.
Indoctrination? It is indoctrination.
Well, yeah.
You read the history books, it is indoctrination. And also Judge Soros has money in it, so does Bill Gates. Judge Soros is a self-avowed communist. That's the way I look at it.
Right. I mean, there's no question that there are extreme liberals that are part of this whole scheme.
Right.
And you want to be aware of this. It's not going to give you a balanced view of things. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. It's America's always at fault, and it's just not exactly a balanced presentation of things.
If you go into Google and Google 3rd grade history books on Common Core, you'll be absolutely shocked at what you're reading.
Right. Well, you're saying this to your fellow members here, because I've done it, and I know how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people, if you go online and through YouTube, you listen to how bad it is, you'll be amazed. Sometimes you have to listen through an hour and a half of presentation, and once you're done with it, you go, oh my gosh, this is unbelievably bad. And each little item that is presented is usually extremely bad. Yes, sir?
Are you saying that private schools are forced into this too?
Private schools are not forced into it, but schools that receive, charter schools, they receive, they're public schools, right? They have a private charter, but so they're actually kind of brought into the process, yes.
But a private school, let's say like Central Catholic, they would have.
Well, okay, that's different because the Catholic schools have bought into it, regrettably, right? But, okay, Bill Gates, well, some of them have bought into it.
Yeah, a lot of them have, but not all of them.
Okay, all right.
For the money.
But not all of them are, it's not the case that all of them are away from it. Some of them, in fact, are in it. That's number one. Number two, I want to say specifically that Bill Gates and the Obamas, they send their kids to private school, right? And those schools do not use Common Core.
So in other words, would it ever come to the point where a school could, if this became law and all the public schools had this, could somebody like a college say, well, you're not credited because you don't have Common Core?
Well, basically, the school districts have the rights to not go with Common Core. They still have that right. In fact, that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing that school districts are saying, we want to stick with MCAS, we don't want to go to Common Core. They were testing the transition. In Massachusetts, they were testing the transition from MCAS to PARC or to Common Core. And that's what we're fighting against, and we're forcing back to MCAS.
If they say no, do they lose federal funding? Is that the?
No, I mean,
I thought Massachusetts joined it so that we could get the federal funding.
well, they got bribed into doing it, but if they refuse to do it, they refuse to do it.
And they don't lose any federal funding?
Well,
They wouldn't get the rise to the top.
Raise-
right, race to the top,
They were
right.
bribed into.
They would,
$250 million.
I'm not sure exactly how it would play out, but basically, you still can, we can still pull out of it, right? It's doable, and it's being done.
Michael?
Yes. Someone?
Michael?
Ted.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ted.
Of the 66% of the school districts
Yes,
that you convinced to delay it,
right.
can you break that up in cities and towns? Have the cities been more resistant than the towns, or is it a mix?
You know, unfortunately, I cannot tell you specifically. I haven't looked at all the different things. I mean, I can tell you that on the North Shore, Peabody was a star district because a fellow, Dave McGinney, who's the chairman of the Peabody School Committee, had realized 4 years ago that race to the top just didn't make sense. So he managed to, convince his fellow school committee members to not accept that money. In other words, he took the lead in now refusing to go completely full blast with Common Core. In fact, opposing Common Core very vociferously, and addressing issues about the Massachusetts Department of Education, or DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, at the head of which you have Mr. Mitchell Chester. Now, Mr. Chester happens to be a vice president of PARC Testing Agency, right? So obviously, it is a patent conflict of interest. So Dave McGinney has been very vocal in throwing all kinds of warnings about this fellow, Chester. And also this was instrumental in Bobby Jindal throwing off the entire thing and writing a scathing letter to Mitchell Chester. Yes, sorry.
Let me just give everybody one data point on the inadequacy of the Common Core standard. I'm a veteran of the math course before Common Core started, through 2009. But during that time, I met Sandra Stockton, who you mentioned, and who was the author of the MCAS test. So in any case, when Common Core came along, she gave me a call and asked if I would weigh in on the math standards.
Chuck, could you stand up so we could hear you?
She asked me to weigh in because I teach mathematics at UMass Lowell for scientists and engineers. So I teach all the calculus programs there. So she asked me to comment on Common Core. Well, I had read Common Core, so I went, dragged it out, read through mathematics standards. And let me just say this. UMass Lowell's a good school, but it's not MIT, it's not Caltech, right? It's a blue-collar school where kids could get in and they could enter a science career. If you meet the nominal standards of Common Core, you cannot succeed in a science and engineering program at U Lowell. Forget the higher level schools, you can't do it at U Lowell. Because we expect students to come in with a basic competency in trigonometry, and guess what? The Common Core has a smidgen of trigonometry. Like the end of Algebra 2, you spend a week telling people about a sine and a cosine, and that's in June, just before summer vacation. So they learn nothing. They can't, by the way, you can't do management. We have management calculus. You have economics, you need trigonometry. All of the science and engineering programs, you need trigonometry. And it's not in the nominal standard. Now, it's in the plus standards, so there's always people who can take AP courses and get there. But the nominal standards don't support success even at U Lowell in science. It's really bad.
Yes.
How did Gates support that and the foundation, given the need for more engineers, candidly, out of the US.
You can probably point to the plus standards, but.
All of the testing is done on computers.
Yeah, I guess that.
Period.
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, in
But
the
they-
interim, there'll be written tests, but when they're taking the test, they're gonna have to be doing it
Yeah,
on
I get
computers.
that.
It's the largest computer contract in America.
I read, and I want to know if it's true, that everybody who developed the curriculum for Common Core, none of them were educators.
Right. So the question is, and this dovetails the point made by the other professor here, the fact that when those standards were devised secretively in Washington, D.C., by the Gates Foundation, pulling together all these different people, there were only 2 that were actual educators. The rest of them were people interested in education, but they were not educators, right? So you had only Sandra Stotsky and James Milgram from Stanford. Okay, so Sandra Stotsky for English, you know, the woman who created MCAS and the success story of Massachusetts, and James Milgram. Only 2. And those 2 were made to swear secrecy about the dealings of what was going on in that committee. And they were so horrified by how bad it was, because this person wanted that person wanted this. It was complete chaos. They could not specifically say how chaotic it was, but they were so horrified by it that both of them pulled out of it and refused to give their imprimatur on the, So Sandra Stotsky and James Milgram refused to sign off on it. So that tells you something. I mean, these people were not completely opposed to trying some sort of national standards, but when they saw how bad it was, they refused to accept it. Yes, Patrick?
Yeah, a few other points about Common Core. Everything was done by the National Governors Council and a consortium of the secretaries of education from across the country.
Which are both lobby groups.
Which are both lobby groups, private organizations,
Right.
not subject to FOIA requests. No freedom of information here on any of this. As Michael mentioned, Dr. Stotsky and everybody on the standards committee, they had to sign confidentiality agreements, and that's what and she's abided by them.
Right.
But it's all of this has been done in secret. It's PARC is a private consortium. They're not open to FOIA at all. Also note that the PARC test is a national test. It's copyrighted. You cannot change it. There is no individualization. So if you want to have portions of your curricula that deviate from the prescribed curriculum, you cannot have that be part of the test. The tests are locked in. They're national. There's no individuality in it at all. So it's completely out of your control. They're making a fair amount of money on it, $30 a test. There's a suggestion at the other forum where they're talking about, where they're saying, oh, it's maybe going to save some money. No, it's not. So these people are making a lot of money on it, both on the testing and on the computers they're selling. So this is just, and the people who are talking about the standards, the gentleman, I can't remember his name, who was in Saugus, who's actually...
Oh, the McGinney? Oh,
the person who's the state coordinator for the transition between MCAS and PARC, he was saying, he was attempting to state that the standards are good. They're good, solid standards. They're better than what we have now. But Davey Gass came out and he was quoting people who actually worked on the standards that said effectively that these are good standards, quote unquote. But if you're a state that already has higher standards, that these are lower standards. The people who wrote this thing are admitting that it's a lower standard than what we as Massachusetts citizens have now.
Right.
And also, Jamie, last point. Jamie pointed out this actually breaks 3 federal laws because you cannot have national education standards. It's against, there were 3 federal laws that prohibit it. This is completely illegal on top of it all. But we know that things being illegal doesn't matter anymore these days.
Let me just add, why would any one state benefit from the Common Core? Okay, there might be a couple of states that are so low that they would benefit because now the kids would perhaps know how to balance a checkbook. okay? Maybe it does this for a few states, but very few. It's absolutely not the case that in Massachusetts we need any of this because we have higher level of achievements in Massachusetts. We want to keep that level, and we cannot go down in math to doing weak algebra 2 and not trigonometry. We absolutely need to have trigonometry. It's absolutely not part of Common Core. I mean, they say it's optional, but it's not written. So basically, guess what? The teacher will not teach to it, period. Right? And then, just a second. And then in English, because we've talked about math, in English, what it does, Common Core, it cuts down, it takes half of what kids were doing using English and American literature. And it keeps that, but of course it shrinks it from 100% to 50%, and then it throws in 50% of educational text, informational text on, you know, the environment and, you know, transgender, whatever they want to throw in. So that's what kids, it's age inappropriate. A lot of it is age inappropriate. Okay.
Right now, if a parent has a problem, they can go to the school board. How will this affect the school board's ability to help with parents' concerns? Or will the school boards actually be ineffective after this?
Well, if Common Core were to be adopted, it would completely snuff out the ability of parents and teachers, and in fact, student groups to really have a curriculum that matches their own desires. I mean, you know, in certain states, you really want to have more of a focus on farming, and in industrial states like this one, it's not farming that's going to be more of the focus, right? So you want to be able to tailor your instruction to the state. With Common Core, you don't.
So the school board would just be rubber stamping?
Yeah, exactly.
Everything they give
They
from
would
Washington?
be marginalized, and parents would be also marginalized, and the students would be marginalized, and the taxpayers marginalized. Everyone being marginalized. Yes?
What's the media coverage on?
Zero,
I
or
know.
very little.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why we have to take it into our own hands and spread the message through. It's empowering to realize, I can tell you, that by working hard on something, you can really make a difference. So that's what I want to tell you. You can cause this thing to re-energize the grassroots movement of either conservative or constitutional thinking in this country, in your town, by making sure that you show the school committee that you're watching over them. You're not letting them do whatever they want. Yes, Patrick?
One or two other comments. This is turning into something that's having some strange bedfellows, as it were. As you mentioned, the new head of the Massachusetts Teacher Union is against Common Core. But what we saw at one forum where there's a business, the Massachusetts Business Alliance is out there actually pushing Common Core, you know, which, and Chamber of Commerce, yeah. So there's people aligned on this in very odd ways, not your typical liberal versus conservative. But also what's happening with these forums is that there's large numbers of parents who weren't politically active necessarily before coming out, and it's a huge opportunity to network with people. Were you going to mention the DEC event?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, on July 22nd.
So that's Tuesday next week.
That's Tuesday next week. At various theaters across the state and across the country, Glenn Beck at 8 p.m. will be holding an event where he'll be talking about Common Core. It's We Will Not Conform is the title. In Massachusetts, probably Lowell, Burlington, and maybe Revere. I don't think any of those. I'm sorry? No, not Liberty Tree Mall, unfortunately. Well, I'll read through all. Dedham, Foxborough, Bellingham, Boston at the Fenway 13, Randolph, Framingham, Millbury, Marlborough, Swansea, Kingston, Lowell, Burlington, Revere, West Springfield, and Hadley. So I think the 2 or 3 closest around here are Lowell, Burlington, and Revere. But that isn't, it's an event, it is an event, so it's not your typical movie ticket, you walk in there, it's a $20 per head, event, but it's a live event, also, and then it's gonna be rebroadcast on the 29th, I think at pretty much the same theaters, but that will be a taped, a re-presentation of what was done on the 22nd. So again, people who are maybe watching back that aren't politically active in like Tea Party or other things, they'll be coming out. I think that if you're gonna go to this, I would suggest doing that, but getting there a little bit early and talking to other people.
And have a clipboard.
And have a clipboard, yes.
I think it would be extremely helpful if you went there with a clipboard and people that come out upset say, look, there is something that is statewide in Massachusetts, please sign up your name now, and then you'll be part of the movement.
Correct, yeah. And he also has a book that goes with it called Conform, which you can find at Barnes & Noble.
Thank you, that's very helpful, yes. Yes, sir.
Different countries in the world have different methods of teaching.
Yeah.
Is there any other country that has something close to this? Common Core style of method?
Well, it's hard to say because, you know, their claim was that it was internationally benchmarked. It's not. So you know, they can take a little something from here, something from there. There is really nothing that the countries that perform well, they perform well because they teach content, right? They don't teach fuzzy skills. They teach content. And once you teach content, you know, there's discipline. You know, if you don't test out, you take it again, right? I mean, it's not because you're socially involved with your school or your class that you are doing something that is valuable per se. If you don't learn the content, you don't learn the content. So, you know, how do they achieve high levels in Japan or in South Korea or in Singapore? Well, it's because they do the right things, and we've got to do the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what it takes to achieve good results. We don't need to come up with some kind of newfangled Common Core. We don't need it. We just don't need it. It might be helpful to balance checkbooks in Mississippi, but that's all really that it can do.
Question, is there a lump cost that's associated with what it's going to cost Massachusetts to transform from MCAS, which made us #1, to bring in Common Core? Like, is there one big figure that it's going to cost us?
Well, there is a number, $350
million, Jamie Gass estimated, for the implementation. But that was just estimated.
This is just estimated.
And it's always double that.
Yeah, please.
And nobody's done studies on that. That's one thing.
Yeah, right. That's why we have this, you know, that's why we have the municipal cost benefit analysis. We don't really know. I mean, we're going to go down, and we have to pay money to go down. Why?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it boils down to why do something that will bring us down and have to pay money for going down. It makes no sense.
Bruce Tarr was talking about cost savings at our Greater Boston Party meeting in Boston, and he was taking Common Core maybe to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, if we were to, you know, get rid of it, $92 to $156 million a year.
Okay. So, yeah, because it has a yearly cost. Right.
$30 a test per pupil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that we would save per
Yeah,
year.
if
we got rid of it.
Above and beyond what it costed
Okay.
borough.
MCAS is costly too, but less costly. Okay. Okay. So there are issues. Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm a member of Common Core Forum, and I don't have children or people in the education system, but I got involved because it's a prime example of government overreach. There's always been an element of the population wants national education system, and this is it. And they took advantage of the states in 2009 when there was a low economy. And a couple people went to Bill Gates with this idea of national Common Core standards, and he agreed. He pumped $400 million into it. And they bribed the states. I think Massachusetts was $250 million with the race to the top. And just think in 2009 what the economy was like. And so they got the states to go along by bribing in a bad economy. But it's a prime example of government overreach, and getting rid of local control and state control of education. So I just wanted to say that that's sort of how I got involved. Then you start getting the educational weeds and stuff.
Well, yeah, Michael has taken some videos of, I believe you've got Dr. DuPesta online.
Yes.
So if you could mention those videos, but also people to look for, Jamie Gass and Dr. Stotzi go around regularly and talk about this. Dr. Pesta was here in Shrewsbury in June. Yeah, and from what I understand, I think they said something may be coming back again in the fall, like August or September. So if you can hear these people talk about it, they're very authoritative, but if you don't want to wait till then, go online. Michael's got some videos online. You can Google them.
What you do, you go to commoncoreforum.org and you will see the videos.
Use the mic and tell us all.
Yeah, right. So yeah, the address is commoncoreforum.org. You just go there and you click the video thing, and you'll have a bunch of presentations in Peabody, in Norfolk, in Shrewsbury, and then the DuPesta. You really, I took down quite a few, and they're all there.
And you can share those?
Yeah, sure, because they're all YouTube things. So once you click, you get the address, and you send it to friends. Sure. But basically, for you to retrieve those those events, you just go to commoncoreforum.org, and in the video section, you'll find them. You click, it will open a different box, and then you'll find the link, and then you can send that link to someone in an email.
Michael,
Yes.
I wanted you to explain how, when you started with your show, was that at the same time you were getting into this Common Core?
Right. Well, I do have a connection with Janet. I have to explain to you. I did start a show on BevCam in Beverly, and I put all the videos that I took there, and they were obviously watched by the school committee with no effect because they were not interested in being educated. Very sad, very sad. But, it didn't affect me because I was doing it for people in the state. Now, after, when we became clear as to what the goal was, which was to actually call up the school committee members individually, we placed hundreds of calls, maybe thousands, I should say, of calls between all of us. And we had such good results. Then I went on Beacon Hill to testify. I mentioned that earlier. And lo and behold, there was one person who took that testimony down or on her camera, and that was Janet. So I saw her in the morning, and she video recorded me among others. Now in the evening, there was the vote in Beverly about whether to continue with MCAS or switch over to Park, and I knew they were probably going to go to Park. So they had scheduled their, I wouldn't call it debate, their meeting in a school away from City Hall. In City Hall, they have the cameras. But in that middle school memorial, there would be no cameras. So I called BevCam and I asked them, is there going to be any camera there? And they said no. So I picked up a camera at BevCam and I showed up at 7:20. At 7:20, I set up the equipment because they were finishing off the meeting. And at close to 7:30, the chair of the school committee came to me and said, Michael, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm going to take this to be aired on BevCam, on my show. But he proceeded to ask me if I'd been authorized to do this. And this was a very surprising question because I didn't really need to be authorized. But he pressed me, and at some point I said, look, this is a public meeting, and I'm the public. And he looked at me, and he was not getting it, so I had to repeat a little closer. This is a public meeting, and I am the public. So he backed off. At the end of the meeting, the mayor had arrived. At the beginning of the meeting, the mayor had arrived, And at the end of the meeting, I wanted to have a word with the mayor, saying, you know, I'm here with this aggravated problem with the school committee not wanting me to tape this thing because Beckham is not invited to do this taping. It's a very important vote. I want to see their rationale. Well, before I even got to that point, the head of the school committee snatched the mayor away from me and said, we're moving on to an executive thing. Okay. So the next day, when I return the equipment to Beckham, I have a very honest discussion with the head of Beckham, who tells me, I understand that you ran into problems. In fact, I had a very irate phone call from Mr. Manzo from the school committee saying that you had misrepresented yourself and us to them. So what do you have to say? So I explained the sequence of events. I went to Beacon Hill in the morning on the train going back to Beverly. I realized that it was not going to be taped. I wanted it taped because there would probably be no school parents coming. In fact, there was one person that came because Jan Avalon had written a piece in the Salem News, and this had actually drawn a mother to the school committee meeting. And this woman was horrified by how bad the presentation of the school committee was. Right? So obviously it's on YouTube now. You know, they can see how ill-prepared and unprofessional and how completely in the bag the decision had been concocted. I mean, there was no debate. It was a farce, basically.
Michael, you forgot to tell them they suspended you.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. I forgot to tell you.
They fired you.
Yeah, they suspended me for 3 months. It shows you that it's really not affecting me that much. Right? But they did. They tried their darndest best to suspend. I mean, they suspended me. Right. I cannot air the videos that I had ready. I had made ready for the Beverly citizens. They are in fact impacting my First Amendment rights. They are. Thank God for the internet. You know, I'm not
So can I make another
that upset about it. But Janet has something to say.
Yeah. So this is what Michael is doing is an amazing thing. And what I've been trying to do kind of came and crashed into what he's doing because he knew that I have tried to start a press registry for independent press, which is, you know, if you have a car, you have a registry. So he and I were talking about this situation, and I told him, Michael, you need the press pass. And so he came by, and we processed the application, and he had the press pass. And the thing is, the next time he was around these people, he had a press pass on, and he can tell that part of the story, which is really hysterical. But I just want to add, okay, that my efforts to get into these meetings and cover them and not be harassed by every elected or appointed official is so relevant to this whole thing, because now he has a show. I had told him earlier, what you need to do is go, he had said to me a long time ago, how do I get a pass? I said, well, you have to, if you don't have any media experience, then you have to go take the cable access class in your town. That'll give you basic information, and that's what he did. And so, I don't know if you want to add any more to this right now.
Yeah, I want to tell you that it makes a huge difference to each one of you individually if you have a press pass, number one, and if you have a camera, number two, or reverse the order, if you have a camera and if you have a press pass. Because the camera is something that makes people behave better, right? It really does, okay? So for $200, you have equipment now that is very good in terms of quality. I mean, honestly, the quality is outstanding. The sound is pretty good, and the ease of uploading to the internet is unbelievably simple. Unbelievable. I mean, really, it's nothing to do. You just plug into the computer and it's going to the internet. It's amazing. So, I would say, please, each one of you, when you think that you can have an impact, and each one of you, in fact, can think and should think you can have an impact by going to your school committee or to your city hall and do things that Lenny cannot do on his own because he needs us to ask for numbers and, voice our, using our 3 minutes in front of the cameras. We go to the cameras. This is what Lenny Mead. You guys know Lenny Mead?
Some of us.
Okay, some of you. Okay, he's moving to Florida. Well, the thing that he says is simple. You just go to your school committee, and if you have a friend that will put you on your own video that you'll put on YouTube, great. But you even can talk to the cameras of your town, and for 3 minutes you can read the contracts that the people have that have these very, very generous benefits that you don't have, that I don't have, right? And then you say, look, this is not what I consider fair. Okay, just make the point, 3 minutes. You have it taped, and then they talk about it around you, right? And that's what the internet can do, because it's so easy to video record it,